So for anybody who hasn't got to the reproductive system lecture, please don't stress. Anybody new just joining us in the January intake, there's going to be a lot of material here that you haven't covered. Don't get a bit freaked out if there's a lot of students that know the answers. There are many students who have come to sort of close to the end of their biomedicine year, so they've picked up a lot of information along the way. But do join in and do just sort of pick up what you can, and it'll help you when you get to the reproductive system lecture. So let's make a start. Okay, so we've got Jackie. She is female. She is overweight. She's 28 years old. She's married with no children, and she's a secondary school teacher. So when she attended clinic, she reported that her reasons for being there were to reduce endometriosis signs and symptoms. So she really was suffering from endometriosis, and she wanted to know what she could do to try and reduce the impact that that was having on her life. She also reported with constipation, and her aim was to improve bowel function. So what we do when we have a client that comes into clinic, we ask them to outline their main reasons for being there, what symptoms are causing them problems, and we ask them to rate them in terms of, sort of whether they're moderate or severe, or just really on that scale. So in this particular case, we've got severe endometriosis, moderate to severe constipation, and the impact that these are having on work and on the daily life is that it's moderate to severe. We also tend to ask about the general well-being sort of over the past week. And in this case, Jackie reported it as, not being particularly good. She said it was moderate to severe in the scale, so not really that good. It's also really useful to find out how long these symptoms have been in place. And very often the symptoms can have been there for a longer time than the diagnosis. So for her endometriosis, she was diagnosed 3 years ago. So we have to assume that she had her signs and symptoms for a much longer period than that before she actually got a diagnosis. The constipation seems to be more recent. She says that she has had that for the past 3 to 4 months. So when she was diagnosed with endometriosis 3 years ago, she was complaining of severe dysmenorrhea and myalgia. So for anybody that hasn't covered this lecture, anybody want to shout out on our chat what dysmenorrhea is?
Yeah, very strong, or very painful pains during menstruation.
Okay, thank you, Jade. So very heavy periods. And what about menorrhagia? Anybody put on the chat menorrhagia?
Isn't that the very heavy bleeding?
Yeah, we've got pain and we've got heavy bleeding, and this is really what she is reporting with. Okay, so her periods are heavy. She bleeds for up to 9 days every 32 to 33 days. So just before her period, she notices that her breasts are tender and they're sore, with some vaginal itching and discharge. She finds sexual intercourse painful. So this is where we were talking about dyspareunia. And she has got a constipation. She's got constipation with a Bristol stool chart of 1 to 2. So let's take a look at the Bristol stool chart for anybody that hasn't seen this before. So we've got the various different types, and we will ask our client to distinguish or to pick out which is the most common type of stool that they have. So we've got type 1 and type 2 stools in this particular case with Jackie. So what are we looking at? So do you want to type in to the chat what a type 1 and type 2 stool might be an indication of?
Kannst ja immer die 4 dazu machen.
Yeah, absolutely. So she's reporting with constipation, and this is what anybody giving us this type 1, type 2 stool, we would be able to pick that up from sort of that information. Okay, she passes a stool every 2 to 3 days. So what's going to be happening here? We're not going to be getting rid of the various waste matter and toxins that are accumulating in the body. So we could have potentially this autotoxemia, where waste products, toxins, they're being reabsorbed because they're not being eliminated in a timely fashion from the bowel. So really we're looking at, we would certainly want to see a bowel movement at least once a day. Ideally, if we had one sort of really in that sort of foot in, foot out sort of basis, that's perfect. But we would like to see one a day at least. She notices bright red blood on the toilet paper when she strains whilst defecating. So what could this indicate? What would those splashes of bright red blood indicate? So yeah, piles is a common name, Jules. Yeah, hemorrhoids is a medical term that we would be looking for, and it could potentially lead to sort of fissures. So yeah, that could happen, but really probably we can't make that assumption. We'd really be looking at the stage about hemorrhoids. So she could have external or internal hemorrhoids that could be getting irritated and could start bleeding when she actually passes a motion. And generally we would ask questions like, you know, where would you see the blood? Would it be bright red? Would it be dark red? We would ask the color of the blood, but if there's splashes around the side of the toilet bowl, that can very often indicate that this could be hemorrhoids. She's also reporting with abdominal bloating and flatulence. This is another thing to consider in the equation here. So let's take a look at the family history. So her mother and father are both alive with no known pathologies, which is great. Her sister, who's 18, suffers from severe dysmenorrhea. And this is where you start to sort of think, is there any sort of family history? Because in the case of endometriosis, there is that linkage with genetics and family history. So medication, we always ask about medication. So ibuprofen, she's taken this during menstruation. So this is really for pain relief. Past medication, she was on the oral contraceptive pill for irregular periods. She was on them from she was 14 to 19. And she takes a vitamin B6 supplement. Anybody, any idea what this is related to? What pathology this would generally be recommended for? So she's come with endometriosis, she's come with constipation. Which one is she really sort of going to be, is this going to be indicated for? Could be very helpful for PMS, yeah. So really, this is endometriosis, can be commonly prescribed vitamin B6. So we know about a Bristol stool chart and her bowel frequency. So let's take a look at medical history. So she had early onset of menstruation at 10 years old. What is the medical term that is given to that first period? What's the word that we would use? Yes, Erin, great. So menarche. So that would be the term that we would use to describe the first menstruation. So we know that she has had natural birth. This is always really important to get this information because we're starting to think about populating the gut microbiome. What sort of bacteria might have been introduced at that early stage? And when we think about a natural birth, we're thinking about gulping the vaginal fluid when going down the vaginal canal. during birth, and that really would be that first inoculation of a fairly sterile gut. Bottle fed, so then we're thinking about not getting all those sort of immune factors and the natural benefit that would come from breastfeeding. So very, very useful in building up a picture of what the gut microbiome is like or would be like from an early age. So when we start to summarize things, we get a case history and we go through the various different body systems, and we ask lots of questions related to the digestive system, the nervous system, the immune system, reproductive system, urinary system, cardiovascular, etc. All those topics that you study in biomedicine. And then what we do is we summarize that information. So in this particular case, we're summarizing that information, putting the digestive system, the nervous system, the endocrine system, and the reproductive system. We won't always have issues with every system, but generally when people present at clinic, they're presenting with multiple issues, or several issues anyway. It's very rarely that we have a client that comes to clinic that just has one concern, one health concern. We usually have at least a couple of them. So in this case, we've got the digestive system, the Bristol stool chart score of 1 to 2, and stool frequency of every 2 to 3 days. So we're flagging that as being constipated. She's got abdominal pain with the constipation, and she's got burping and flatulence throughout the day. So we could potentially think that there is some sort of gut dysbiosis. They very often do have a concern about their fertility and their ability to conceive and bring a baby to term. So this is something that, naturally she is going to have sort of some level of stress about. And for anybody that is trying to conceive, when they have endometriosis, they're going to be less relaxed about it than they might otherwise have been. And this can create a lot of stress and anxiety, which then can have that knock-on effect in terms of their ability to conceive. So the endocrine system, so think about her hormones here. So when we're talking about a 2 to 3 p.m. slump, what we're really tending to talk about here is where we've got that dip in the blood sugar levels. And this manifests itself an awful lot that somebody maybe has had a lunch that has had a lot of fast releasing sugar from those foods, those high GI foods. And then they've got that slump afterwards and that craving for sugary snacks. So always ask clients about, do they crave anything? Because this can give us really, really useful information. She also has stated that her weight has increased significantly over the past few years, and this can indicate an imbalance that is actually going on in her body. We've got the reproductive system, so we've got endometriosis as a possible cause of infertility. We've also got a vaginal discharge and itchiness. So what might a vaginal discharge and itchiness indicate? So absolutely, it could indicate candida. So it could be that she has a yeast infection. So generally, if you're have any sort of unusual vaginal discharge, can indicate that there's perhaps an infection, a sexually transmitted disease, or some sort of condition such as somebody said a jade, you've said bacterial vaginitis. So really where we've got that inflammation of the vagina that can result in a discharge itchiness and pain. And the cause is usually a change in the bacterial and the balance of the vaginal bacteria or an infection. So we could be thinking about also things that we've covered in the past. So we've got that yeast infection, we've got that vaginitis, bacterial vaginosis. We could also think about trichomonas, so it's caused by a protozoan organism. We could be thinking about gonorrhea, chlamydia, or we could even think about pelvic inflammatory disease. So this is something that we would want to ask a few more questions about. She's also reporting with tender breasts. So we're just thinking about that whole sort of how her balance is in terms of her reproductive hormones, and especially sort of any sort of premenstrual symptoms that she's having. So let's take a look at her food diary. So for breakfast, she's having, or she's tending to skip breakfast, and she's having a coffee on her way to work. And so she walks to her nearby school where she teaches. So think about she's going in to teach a day at school. She hasn't had a breakfast. In the mid-morning, she has a snack, and that's an apple and a handful of mixed nuts, mainly peanuts. When we think about nuts, are we thinking about them as being inflammatory or pro-inflammatory, anti-inflammatory? Would we prefer to see her eating some different type of nuts? Yes, so it's mainly peanuts. We're thinking a predominance of omega-6. We would like to see some more of the omega-3 anti-inflammatory nuts there. Yes, so we would prefer sort of cashews or walnuts. Absolutely, you know, we have to think about any potential contamination of peanuts with mold and that. So a lot of really useful points. Yes, seeds would be a very, very good alternative here. But in terms of even just thinking about that she's not hungry in the morning, what sort of organ might we be thinking about as being under stress in this case? Yes, yeah, absolutely. So generally, if somebody's sort of presenting with not being hungry in the morning, we start to think about the impact that there could be on the liver. So something there to think about as well. So think about the liver in this case. Is it detoxifying? Is it under an awful lot of stress? Let's look at the diary and we'll be able to work that out quite quickly. So at lunchtime, she's going to eat in the school canteen. What sort of food is she eating in the school canteen? Pizza, pasta with white sauce and chicken, chips and curry, followed by a dessert. So sponge and custard, ice cream and apple pie. So yeah, Kelly, spot on, beige junk. So yes, Kate, we're thinking about gluten. We're thinking high GI, so that sugar is being released very, very quickly. Processed foods, absolutely, Samir. So you're starting to paint a picture of what sort of intake of nutrients that she is actually getting from the food. Tess, no vegetables. Yes, and we're not seeing any sign of vegetables here. Yes, we have to think about how is the food cooked, what sort of oils are being used. And, you know, absolutely any wonder that she has a mid-afternoon slump. What is happening when she has the mid-afternoon slump? She's reaching for coffee with cow's milk and chocolate biscuits. So really, no nutrition here, and this sort of false trying to satisfy the needs of her body for energy. So spiking the blood sugar there as well. So great to be getting all the different sort of input here. Absolutely no antioxidants or phytochemicals, low fiber. We have to even think about food in a school canteen. So it being cooked, how it's cooked, how long is it left sitting there? Is it overcooking? You know, even if we were getting broccoli and nice healthy vegetables, perhaps the fact that it's all been sort of cooked in advance and left sitting in a bain-marie or under heating lamps, then, you know, we're going to be losing the nutrients from it, and it's going to end up, you know, a lot of can end up really quite overcooked. Dehydration, so that's another aspect we need to look at again. And when we look at the liquids that she's taking, we're seeing that she's a 300 ml water bottle during the day. Now think about a teacher who's standing talking to a class all day. I mean, using her voice. Think about the dehydration, that she really would need to have a greater intake of fluid during the day. Really even just to moisten her vocal cords, apart from anything else that she would need the water for. So her evening meal, so she has dinner at 7 o'clock. She has a glass of white wine, a large glass of white wine prior to dinner with some crisps. She tends to order from a meal planning service, and she gets dinners delivered to the house, which she microwaves. How beneficial is a microwave pre-prepared meal? She has no control over what's in that food in terms of the cooking process, the oils, the ingredients, the quality of the ingredients, and then any nutritional value is potentially being decimated by, you know, the microwaving as a method food, xenoestrogens. And this is where we all have, you know, the ability to start to educate the people around us. If you're working in an office and people are going to the staff room and microwaving things, you know, you can start to get that message out there that that really isn't very beneficial. You know, a lot of people do not know that you shouldn't microwave in plastic. So even if you're in a position to, you know, to have some influence on that, maybe to provide other dishes, to maybe put up a notice so that, but you can start to get that message out there that it's really, really, you know, not advisable. So her meals, well, again, we've got chicken. I mean, think about the quality that a lot of chicken, especially in sort of a processed environment where they're putting together meals for home delivery. So chicken pasta dish. Again, a lot of people say, oh, I don't eat sugar. But they kind of forget that pasta just breaks down very, very quickly into sugar. It doesn't have the fiber content. So it is really quite quick releasing. The beef bolognese, lasagna, fish curry, and white rice. So we're seeing a lot of pasta here. We're seeing white rice. You know, so we're thinking about high GI. Dishes are kept in plastic containers and then microwaved in the plastic containers. So even just storage of things in the plastic containers isn't beneficial. Her evening meal, she has a couple of chocolate biscuits. So we're thinking about chocolate, we're thinking about the ingredients of chocolate, we're thinking about the stimulatory effect of chocolate, you know, the sugar content, and then we're thinking about green tea in the evening. So, you know, then there's the caffeine in the green tea. At this particular stage of the day, I would be recommending sort of a nighttime tea, one of the relaxing teas. Anybody got any suggestions here for a nice evening tea? Chamomile is a super tea to have at any stage of the day because it is really, really soothing. It's a relaxant. So lemon balm tea, any of the nighttime teas, passiflora, lavender, you can get some lovely mixes. So absolutely a lot of good suggestions here for evening teas or nighttime teas, and a lot of super brands out there that you can get sort of really nice blends together. So yeah, it can be mixed together to get a nice blend. So thinking about liquids, we've got a 300 ml water bottle per day, not enough. What are we looking for? What sort of volume do we generally recommend to our clients? Yeah, certainly I would be looking at 1.5 to 2 liters a day. But just remember that this can be, you know, the herbal teas can form part of that. If we're looking at black tea or we're looking at sort of ordinary tea, if we're looking at coffee, we're thinking that it's more dehydrating. So I wouldn't count that in as part of the fluid intake. But activities can all contribute to both fluid intake, help flush.
Oh, bugger.
So what would be the first system that we would be thinking about? What organ system would immediately flag up? Yeah, so I mean, certainly there's a number, really in this particular case, we'd really be thinking about primarily about the reproductive system and the digestive system, but we're definitely going to be thinking about the endocrine system as well. We could be thinking about her nervous system in terms of, the stress of the fertility journey and her trying to conceive. So certainly, yeah, the digestive system, the reproductive system, the nervous system, and the endocrine system are ones that we would be thinking about here. So when we talk about endometriosis, what are we really thinking about? So first of all, where does it tend to commonly affect? Yeah, so generally sort of really around the reproductive organs, absolutely. So we're thinking about the fallopian tubes, we're thinking about the ligaments, the uterosacral ligaments, we're thinking about, the pelvic cavity, we're thinking about the intestine. But it can be in other places. It could even be, yes, it could be the bladder for a lot of women. It could be even in the joints, or it could even be found in the lungs. So you have to bear in mind that it can migrate to different parts of the body, and it can have an impact. Yeah, Erin, absolutely. I've heard that as well. So, we do have to think, if we have pain in any particular part of the body that's following a cyclical hormonal pattern, do consider endometriosis, do consider endometrial tissue that could have migrated to the different parts of the body. So how common is it normally? Are we thinking about 1 in 100? Are we thinking about 1 in 10? I think we're really looking at probably more sort of about 10% of the population. I mean, sort of 1 really in 10 would be sort of, it's very, very common. And, a lot of people that present with infertility are affected by endometriosis. When would there be a greater risk of somebody having endometriosis? Think about family history. Think about if they have a very long menstrual cycle, and also it can be, impact people who have never given birth. So this is where, you start to think about how does it impact on people, how many people are affected, and what might be a greater risk factor. So what is really happening in endometriosis? Let's go back to the chat here. I saw an answer. Oh, I've lost it here. So Faria, ectopic endometrial tissue, there's inflammation. Yeah, oh yeah, you've got it there. So you've got that tissue. So basically what has happened is that you've got this ectopic endometrial tissue that is found elsewhere in the body, and that it follows that cyclical pattern, of the menstrual cycle. But if you think that if it's not in if it's not in a place where you can have an exit for that blood, then there's going to be pain associated with that, because that sort of blood accumulates during that sort of menstrual cycle.
Hello. Just realised I forgot the coffee capsules at home. Oh my!
Why might it happen?
Sorry, I didn't turn this down a bit. Okay, it's so awkward.
What, on Friday?
Yeah. I was so uncomfortable.
Is it because of what she said to you?
Yeah,
Well, no, it
estrogen
was-
dominance can be a reason that it happens.
They're like children. They're like, and then
Did
yeah,
I come
did
in?
I don't know. I don't remember.
So really, we need to start to think about how
the
does this
email address,
tissue
I tell you,
get
it's the
outside of the
article
body,
on
and
the
why
website.
is it
Is
not
that next to you?
got rid
She
of?
put on my
So
desk.
think about
Why
the
did
immune
you
system, that
put
maybe
that?
how we would classify this, or
I
how
don't
would
really
we
care.
use it, the
I mean, I
terminology
couldn't
we'd
care less
use
about it,
would
but
be
that's not the point. The
that
other thing is
there's
also,
altered immune surveillance. So
you know what I
basically,
mean? It's
if we've
also
got
head
some of
over
this
fucking
tissue
head.
that has
John,
migrated into the pelvic cavity, for example, we would really need
as
our
well. It's
immune
not
system
good.
to
He thinks it's
recognize that that tissue
It's not just
shouldn't be
that. She
there,
took 2
so
pictures
that this is
when we lined
endometrial
up. 2
tissue,
pictures. she
and
took.
the immune
thought we should
system,
take
we would
loads of
want then to
pictures.
destroy
we went to
that
that-
tissue,
Yes,
because it's
we
really
took
not
loads.
meant to be in the
No,
pelvic
but that's
cavity,
the
or
whole
it's
thing.
not
That's the
meant to
joy
be in
you
the
have,
lungs
isn't it?
or in the
You
different
can collect
parts of the
loads in
body,
order
or
to see
such as
what
the
it is.
joints. So we think
And
we
for
need to
my
think
mum,
about the immune
my
system
mum,
not doing
hold
its
on,
job
hold
properly,
on.
because
I'll take
it's
50
not
pictures and I'm not going to
recognizing
take one.
that
So
ectopic
no,
endometrial
really?
tissue
If he
in
asked her to
different
be put on the
parts of the
website, that
body.
would be.
So that would be one of the reasons. We've got
No,
estrogen
the
dominance
pictures, there was
as
shit, we
well.
couldn't even use them.
We also have the term
we can't use the
retrograde
pictures.
No.
menstruation.
Exactly.
So what's
Oh,
what
she's
do we
good at
mean by
doing
retrograde
reels.
menstruation?
Really? I haven't seen John goes, it's shit. I'm like, yeah.
It took people a long time to have the title marketing manager as well, and she just got it.
Okay,
Excuse
so
me,
when I go to
didn't mean you fuck
yoga
off, but
and
yeah.
we
Not really.
get to the
That's
part
what I'm saying, but
where
clearly she
we
worked at thingy
do
and she
shoulder
was a job.
stands, I have this amazing yoga
She must have,
teacher.
like,
He's
had
from
her
Nepal,
notice that-
and he kind of goes through his routine. And when he gets to
Well,
this part,
having
every week he's talking about, the shoulder stand, but not to do it for what he says, anybody on your period time.
having
So you just
been
think,
to
if
Abbott
you're
Care,
sort of
I suspect
elevating your legs and your hips and that, so that
you know,
you're
they have so
doing that
many
shoulder
youngsters working
stand,
there. I
it's
suspect she was
really
one of
about,
them.
you don't want that menstrual blood to
But
flow
it's
back
fucking
and
ridiculous. Then on
implant
Friday
somewhere else. So
afternoon, my
really,
phone
it's
rings
about that
because
migration of the
Mike had
endometrial
asked me
tissue back through the
ages
fallopian tube,
ago when
and then sort
when
of
they moved to this fancy
taking up
house
residence somewhere else.
that
So this
if
is
I,
really,
because he needed
for
to
years
put
and years and
somebody else,
years, I
I
was
think it
listening
was just a
to
temple,
our yoga
put
teacher
someone else
saying
on
this,
the
and it was only when I started
alarm
biomedicine that I
thing.
really understood
And I said,
why he
okay,
would have
so
been
yeah,
suggesting
just a
not
bit
to do
hurt.
shoulder stands
So
when you're actually
yeah,
menstruating.
well, can't come.
When else might you find
The
that there could be
alarm is
this
going off. The car,
transfer
have
of
you tried my
tissue
staples?
from
Staples, yes, can't get hold of
the
them. I'm like,
uterus
okay.
to different parts of the body?
Friday afternoon, late. And I'm like,
Think about
oh yeah,
if somebody's had an
to
operation.
get us easily through today. And I'm like,
You know,
I'm
yeah,
trying to ring
Severa,
Mike.
if
I'm trying
there's
to ring Sarah.
a
Look at
C-section
that.
or there's surgery,
I
you
told her,
could
Sarah. She goes,
have
oh,
that
yeah,
tissue that
it's
gets
all right. I
transferred
guess they have a quick look at Sarah.
into
I
the
don't know.
pelvic cavity. And there are many people that have reported about,
It's
many people who
uncomfortable.
have
I spoke to John. I
reported
said,
that,
actually, really
they've ended up with
uncomfortable.
problems with
Sarah, then I
endometriosis that is
obviously
worse
spoke to Sarah. I
after
got hold of Sarah, and
surgery,
I'm like,
because of
I
this sort of
wanted
transplant
to.
during
She didn't come in,
during
but when I spoke to
surgery.
Sarah on the phone, she said, oh, I think
Kelly, does it also occur during pregnancy?
No, of course she
I
doesn't.
think
know.
probably
It
it's more
sounds good.
common that it would occur really, you know, if there was
Well,
sort
I
of a
don't know if she's-
C-section
if
and
she's
there
gonna
would
get
be, you
it.
know, there could be that sort of physical migration. I'm not really sure if it actually really occurs during pregnancy. So there's one for me to just
That
double
can't
check
be. They
on.
can't come in at the same time. It's never gonna work.
So we've got
That would never.
also
I
sort
cannot.
of, then there can be that primordial
I would
cells
not
sort
wanna-
of
Then
change
when I, as I said, the
during
word,
they change in different parts of the
there
body.
were
So
two
those
pictures of us
cells
lining up. And
lining
one of
other
them,
body
John looked like
cavities
he had his hat
might
over his
start to
eyes.
differentiate
She was
into
showing me, and I went,
endometrial
"Oh, can I just
cells.
this
So
or this?"
that's when
So
you
I
could
said, so I
also have
went
a problem when they
they-
differentiate into the
No,
endometrial cells, and you
but
have that
absolutely.
issue that then they start
Didn't
to
stop.
follow the hormonal pattern. So just think about the receptors on those cells
Only
will
thing
be
to the big, it was
reacting
like,
to the
"Mommy, I
hormones
love
that
you."
normally cause
I love you. I'm
menstruation.
the best dog
And they will act
The
in the
big,
exact same way, but you're just not in
and
the right
yours,
part
who
of the
was on the
body
list.
for the
She
blood
was
to
the only one
actually
really
escape.
picturing. It's like, okay, I'm
We also need to think about that there could be the transfer of the tissue through blood and lymph as well. So a number of different
I'm like,
reasons why there
oh my
can
God,
be an
and 10
issue.
minutes in. No, and then
So if we're
10
talking
minutes
about the
in, he
signs
goes,
and
"Oh my God, you busted," and I
symptoms,
got all black.
if we're talking about the signs and symptoms of
I'm like,
endometriosis,
yeah, you got this
sorry, I'll
one,
just go
right?
back to Tess's question.
Yeah.
Tess, really, as opposed to
Okay.
so many different
Yeah,
reasons, why would the
I got
cells
other stuff
differentiate in
to
that
do.
way? Well, why do cells differentiate and become
But actually, you
cancerous
want to do the boring
cells?
stuff?
You know,
Don't
if
really
you're
care.
thinking about
Actually,
a
could you
highly processed diet, think about all the
Probably
different
right.
toxins.
I was
You know,
gonna
cells
say,
can become damaged
the
and they
next thing,
can end up sort of
so
having
maybe she should have
mutations,
the
and they
the
can
website
end
training.
up
Oh,
sort of
that's just that.
differentiating in a way that they shouldn't
That is a whole.
differentiate, and
I
that's
mean, I'd love
what
to
we
be able
see
to know.
in cancer as well.
Well, yeah.
So this is
Honest
where
it
we're
is,
really
isn't it? It's
trying
not
to
going to be, is
encourage
it? It's
a
what it is.
healthy, natural diet, removing all those things that are
Like those olive
potentially
oil
going to be
cakes.
damaging and
I
causing
mean,
mutations in the body.
No, you weren't here doing.
So
All of you work normal hours.
what about the signs and symptoms of
Work normal hours.
endometriosis?
Mike's got plenty of money. He furloughed us.
So Jane, yes.
So the government would pay.
We've got pain.
So he furloughed us officially, so we got less pay.
Oh, we've got
And
lots
the
of
government
answers
then
here,
paid
right? Okay, so
pick-up
pelvic pain, we could have nausea, we could have IBS,
obviously
heavy
not the whole
bleeding,
difference,
irregular
and then he
periods.
paid
So
us.
yeah,
Do the thing in,
dysmenorrhea
so
are
he
painful periods, menorrhagia are heavy
We still
periods,
got our money.
acute pain before menses that could last throughout the month.
Really bad.
Could have pain that would radiate to different places of the body.
And I
We
have a
could
real sense
have,
of.
you know, painful intercourse. We
So
could
yeah,
have bowel changes,
yeah,
infertility, absolutely.
Sarah and everyone.
Oh, Kate,
Pretty bad, isn't it?
you have all of those. Oh, wow.
Did you read them?
So you're going to learn a lot of things that you can try to
Afterwards, he
do to
said, "Ring
help
me."
yourself,
And I
hopefully,
said,
during this
Well,
course.
he said,
What,
it's
and then
shit.
she said, like, oh, I hope you didn't see my
Bowel
No,
change,
no,
bloating. Oh, so Jade,
I
you're
haven't
very
done it yet.
knowledgeable
And
as
when I
well
did, we
about
also then
it.
went back
So
together. I didn't
hopefully,
anything, I didn't.
as you learn more about how to support a good, healthy, naturopathic diet, trying to remove all the various different things that are
That
going to
was another,
disrupt
and it
your
was like, whoa,
hormones,
man,
you will
go,
learn,
girl.
and
I was
hopefully
like,
you will get sort of
and
a good
I
resolution
was
to
so
try and sort of
I
remove
was,
this
I was
from
like,
your life. I mean, because it is
I
very,
haven't
very
seen it. I'm like, I
disruptive
didn't see
to
it.
your life. And I'm sure, you know, this sort of regular pain, all the different horrible signs and symptoms that come with it. I mean, it'd be great if you could reduce or eliminate them totally.
I wonder if John will say anything.
Well, that's
So a
the
lot
thing.
of
John
first-hand
said he's gonna
experience,
learn.
and I
He
think
said,
this
"Oh, I
is
need
where
to
I
have
love
lunch
it
with
when
him." He
you
said,
can
"I don't think."
share
He
your
said, "I don't think."
experience on the chat
He
here,
said, "Look at
because, you
him,
know,
goes with
I
Mike.
always say
Right.
that we learn from each other, and
He
who
doesn't
better
have
to
the
learn
final
from than
paper,
somebody
but
that is
to
actually
be
suffering
fair,
from all these
John,
things, because I'm sure you've all done your research into it, and you've all tried to work out what is at the
like
root
all the
cause
other,
of you having endometriosis. So anything that you have found that is helpful, please do share it, because many of you will have clients in the future, and when they would present, if somebody presents with endometriosis, you might remember something that, you know, was discussed here today. In terms of diagnosis, so how would you diagnose endometriosis?
I mean, her hashtag's dogs off Facebook. Was that with the hashtag?
Yeah, really, a laparoscopy is really the gold standard. So for anybody that doesn't know what a laparoscopy is, does somebody want to explain what that is?
No, tell me my work's amazing. And I think I've had a bit more of an input than she. Dogs of Instagram, interior design, office fit, team building.
Oh, I was the office fitter. I
Yeah,
was here the other
do.
time. I was only,
Go ahead.
but I said, yeah.
I mean,
that's
yeah, I
fine.
can't remember all the like
Sure, we should
specific
see a
details, but I
Facebook
know
bit more and have a
it's
see the
surgery where they
results.
make small incisions. There's 2 incisions, and I've got the scars. Like one is in the pelvic area, and one is just below the belly button, I think. And they go in and they look at the organs. They're looking for the endometriosis, like the scars or the lesions or adhesions. That's like a very simplified version.
Yeah, no, absolutely. That's spot on. Thank you, Jade. So really it is that sort of keyhole procedure where there's a camera there and really looking for the endometrial tissue. So you can have, you know, some people may initially have an ultrasound, but this is really the definitive diagnosis, as Marley says, is to do that sort of the laparoscopy. And, you know, this is very often something that is done when somebody starts to undergo investigations for why they can't become pregnant. There may often be, you know, after sort of maybe blood tests, and that a laparoscopy will very often be done. And one of the things that would be looked at would be to see if there's any endometrial tissue that might be impacting the ability to conceive. So thank you. But what if we're thinking about complications? So we know that infertility is really a complication. What other complications would be associated with endometriosis?
0177
So yeah, absolutely. You can have adhesions. And what would those adhesions potentially do? So they can cause obstruction. They can obstruct the fallopian tubes. They can obstruct the uterus. And this can then have that sort of knock-on effect of affecting fertility. We also, I think I saw there, yeah, you can have scar tissue. So you just think about that inflammation that is associated with endometriosis. You can have this recurrent inflammation really can sort of lead to a lot of fibrosis of the tissue. So we've got that sort of scarring, and this can cause the adhesions, and those adhesions can then sort of block, you know, the uterus or the fallopian tubes. We also have something that, you know, if I was asking you about something that was quite distinctive that would be indicative of endometriosis, what would you say? What's something that we commonly associate with endometriosis in terms of the symptoms?
It's just, it was the most bizarre, I tell you that. And what?
Think about chocolate cysts, okay? So chocolate cysts are those sacs that would contain old blood. And if you think about if you've got endometrial tissue in sort of the pelvic cavity and it has no route to exit, what will happen is that it could form that sort of cyst and that accumulation of blood. So chocolate cysts are something, if you saw chocolate cysts on a case study question in an exam, then you would immediately start thinking we could be looking at endometriosis here. So really good clue, something that is really sort of quite distinctive as a complication of endometriosis. So some great answers here. Let me just take a look. Oh yes, sorry. Marianne, we've got chocolate cyst. Yes, you've given that here. So a laparoscopy very often, Vera, they would actually really use a camera. I would think that if they suspected endometrial tissue, that they would do a biopsy then, to just really identify if that was what was actually going on. So yeah, it is a keyhole. Surgery is pretty easy to recover from. Yeah, so you had an ectopic pregnancy and it was easy to recover. Yeah, so it is really one of the least invasive, but again, it is done under a general anesthetic, unless things have changed very recently. you know, when we have got sort of inflammation, we're going to have all the inflammatory markers. We're going to have inflammatory markers are being raised. It wouldn't necessarily be totally specific to endometriosis. So we would see in bloods that the inflammatory markers would be raised, and then we would really need to do an investigation to sort of see
He's a
where
personality
the
vacuum.
inflammation is centering around.
Yeah, he's about as useful as a chocolate teapot.
So
And
how
here's when
is
he
it
was here,
normally
right?
treated
He was going to work
allopathically?
here.
So what, if you
Unless
went to the
somebody told
doctor,
him to
you had a
really stand up and
diagnosis of
kiss someone.
endometriosis,
I mean, I know it's
what
very young,
would
so it
commonly
sounded
be
quite-
prescribed?
Very
He was
young.
like, okay. And then I was like,
Yes, so the
Yeah,
oral
no,
contraceptive pill
but
would
he was
generally
like,
be
there was
sort of
no,
that
when I,
first step,
because I really
and
love
that would
David,
really
and I
be
said
to
to
try
David,
and
how's it
balance the
going? He goes,
hormones to
oh
reduce
my
any
God.
estrogen dominance.
I said,
So yeah, they
do
normally
tell him to
put you on
breathe,
the
please.
pill, and then in
Oh,
some cases they may go
I can
on
still get
to
that
have
laptop.
surgery to remove the ectopic tissue. That really wouldn't
yeah, just
be
do it
sort
again.
of the first step,
Yes,
the
please
first
go ahead.
approach, and it would
The
really
laptop for
depend on
her
the
is
severity
ordered.
as well. And
Let's
yes,
just
there is that
tap on the
issue
bandwagon.
that sort of about 45% of it grows
Actually,
back
I'm gonna.
within a year. So
I'm
is
from
this
in. I
really a
couldn't care less about
long-term
laptop. To be
solution?
quite honest,
So let's
because when
think
I'm home, I
about a more
can't sign in.
natural
That's fine.
approach here.
So nothing will be happening. That's good
So,
for me.
how would you let me just
Need
skip
laptop.
over, you know, the next
Those
two
laptops
questions about the
hanging
positive and the
galore.
negatives and the
But I'm not having this
constipation. You know,
system installed on
in
my
terms of
new
approaching the
laptop. Ain't
case
gonna
from a
happen.
natural perspective, in terms
Because
of
I
thinking
would have said,
about
but now I
the
just think
endometriosis in
if you can just
particular,
buy a
how
laptop
would you
like that,
actually
right?
approach it?
Why
What
should
sort
I
of
make
things
such a
would you
fuss?
suggest?
Why should I go out of my way? No.
yeah.
One lives that I even learn.
I can't believe she's got an email.
No, neither can I. Absolutely
And then
neither.
you said that he's bought Sarah a house.
Yeah, we're really trying to sort
Yeah,
of
he said. Well, that's what it
manage
comes
a
from, so-
number
Oh,
of
yeah,
different
but-
influences. A
I already
lot,
bought
you
it.
know,
I
this is
already bought
again
it.
sort
We're
of
gonna-
something that is
we're gonna-
multifactorial. There's a lot of different things that would be
Oh,
impacted here. There's a lot of potential reasons why somebody might be suffering from endometriosis. So think about the different things that you would have to do. So we'd have to manage all those different influences. And what we would really be trying to do would be to reduce inflammation and to really sort of promote, as you say, promote the sort of the estrogen clearance. So, you know, the question there from, was about how we get rid of bad estrogen. So what we're really trying to do is we're really trying to sort of balance the hormones. So think about the different things that would support estrogen clearance and liver support and immune support. So we've got all different things like, you know, your cruciferous vegetables, you know, your liver detoxification procedures such as castor oil packs, could be milk thistle, a lot of fiber, try and reduce dairy, you know, to try and reduce that
I'm not
inflammation.
sad like that.
You
Well, I
know,
might have had a quick
support
look.
the gut microbiome.
I did
Think
have a
then about
5-minute look, and
herbs and
it's
homeopathy and
very.
acupuncture. So this leads us
man.
into, you know, really
I know I've got to on
let's
WhatsApp.
look at the different things in the diet. So in Jackie's diet,
thanks
let's
for the
look at the
wit. I'm
positives,
completely
let's look at the
agree.
negatives. But in
Yeah,
terms
in
of
order to
thinking about the
exactly.
diet, what do we
Because
think
you have
first
to
of all
add
here
them
in
from the
terms of
thingy account, and I
constipation?
can
So
only
why we've
add
got a lot of
somebody personally.
constipation
Mike could have
with
added
this
her, but it would.
client?
But he would have found the button. So we tried.
So we're not
I remember that's
getting
what I had to do
fiber
with
into the
Sarah. She had
diet.
to
So that
become.
is one of the
She had to
single
befriend me to give
biggest
me access at
factors
the time
here
when
in
I
this
started. I'm
particular
like,
case. She
oh,
needs
I'm
fiber,
not
which she
happy with
needs
that.
fiber to feed
And
her gut
actually look everything
microbiome,
now.
and she
Can I not
needs
kick her off? I
fiber
can't, because then
to
she's gonna
help
lose
eliminate
access.
toxins and wastes from the body.
That
So
is
she's
not
not getting
funny.
enough plant food, she's not getting enough
Yeah,
water.
weird is the
She's
freaking word, I tell you.
let's see
It
what
was
else we have
disgusting.
here. Yeah,
But
absolutely.
anyway,
So
John
we've
said he
got
would
very
speak to
little
him, but
fluid,
he
we've
said,
got
I
very
don't think
little
it's a good
fiber,
idea.
we've got very
No,
little
he did.
vegetable.
Because I
Absolutely.
told John.
Yeah, Riyadh, I think everybody needs to be educated about xenoestrogens, not even somebody that's presenting with a pathology. Male and female
But I said,
really need
is
to
it
be
for you to
educated
tell? He
more
said, well, I
about
can
the
try.
impact of
I'm
xenoestrogens,
like,
you know, in their diet and in the environment, and through sort of things like plastics and plastic water bottles.
oh,
And that.
right. Well, if it is about
So positive,
if we can just,
three positive things about the diet.
He still hasn't gotten back about the ISO thing.
You could
And
struggle
I'm going
here,
to chase him
actually.
on it.
Let's go
Well,
back to the
because
diet.
Gravel, I asked him to send his
Let's go
costs.
back to the diet.
So I get them approved before he starts
Okay,
any
green
work.
tea, but the
Because last
timing
time he did it
of the
for free, and I'm
tea
not
is
having it.
is
I'm not
wrong.
having him do it again because he gets paid by other people.
She's
He just
having
did
an
it for me,
apple.
and I'm not, you know, I don't
I
want to
wouldn't say that caffeine
take
in
advantage of the
coffee
old
is
boy.
positive.
Yeah.
I offered to pay
We
him
need to
last
think about
time,
the
and he
type
went
of
to a
nut. So,
whole
you know, it's
lot,
very good that she's having some
speaking to his
nuts,
whole
but what we
family,
would
and it
then be
went
able to
separate.
suggest is we shift her to eating healthier nuts and maybe swapping on to seeds as well. So this is when somebody is actually using that as a
Have you?
snack already. It's just
If
maybe
you
going to
want,
be
I still got a couple of
easier
months left.
to tilt them over to
YG.
a healthier
Davina,
type
loads
of
of great
snack.
workouts. I've done it
We
for
don't know the
ages.
type of fish she's
You can,
eating.
if I give you my
A
locking
fish
unit, you can just
curry
go
could be a
visit
mix.
them.
We don't know the source
I'm
of
gonna,
it. So
I'll
we
pay
have
for
to
the
think,
year,
you know,
and I
what
don't know when it's
alternatives
renewed.
we
I
could
think it's in March.
suggest.
So you can try it. It's actually very good. They have lives. There's a whole
Yeah,
database of
so
great
there's
ones.
not. Oh,
I
absolutely.
just don't have
I'd
the
say for
space at
sure
home,
that
and I don't do it
the
basically.
fish
Let me just
is
see how long. If
farmed.
you're
I don't
interested,
think it's
you
going
can
to be a
play with that.
nice
It's a very, very
organic
good
mix.
one. It was only like
What
40
about,
quid.
yeah, Carrie? The curry
Yeah,
can
have
have
a look.
spices, so that would be a positive. Maybe we could encourage her to make her own.
Mm-hmm.
So what we're seeing here is that this is somebody who
Okay.
isn't even cooking
Yeah, I saw a
herself,
couple when I had a
really.
look on
So
Netflix.
she's skipping
I
breakfast.
didn't even look for that.
She's
I looked
eating
at,
in the
I
school
don't know what I was looking
canteen,
for.
and she is ordering in
I
from a
think
meal
I looked for
planning
documentary
service.
because I had something on
How would
digestion,
you start
which
to
was my
approach any
intro.
changes? So this was your client. What sort of suggestions? This is somebody who isn't
I've
cooking.
decided I really don't like
So yeah, we can suggest she cook at home. Maybe that's a discussion you need to have with the client. Why does she not cook at home? Does she not feel confident about cooking? You know, she should have the time to cook, we think. You know, we don't know. Is there any reason that she isn't cooking?
do it in the end.
Riyadh, yeah, you're saying that her life's really hard, that she hardly would have any energy to cook at home. Yeah, but we have to think about, you know, what about school holidays and that? I mean, would she have time to cook then? Could she maybe batch cook at the weekends so that she would have something that she could reach for and bring into work? Yes, we could suggest a more healthy eating option so that she would have a different type of meal, maybe one that she doesn't have to microwave. Yeah, if we could even, you know, if we could really, all these different things about starting with one meal a day for her to cook herself. Maybe if she started to have some breakfast, maybe she started to bring something in to work, that would give her a healthier option than eating in the school canteen. So a veg-based smoothie or soup, suggest places to eat. You know, probably if she's eating a lunch, maybe she's getting it for free. It's handy, it's there. So we're immediately sort of asking
I used
her
to
to
be,
do, you know,
10
to
years
add
there with Lloyd,
expense and to do a lot
But
of
I would
work to
feel
bring in her lunch.
uncomfortable there as well because
Are there
all the
any
rich
healthier
people.
options at the school canteen? Maybe even just see if there's any healthier options that she could go for. Maybe she could skip the dessert. Maybe she could have, is a fruit salad or something, an alternative
Bonnie, any
dessert
idea?
there. Is there a salad? Yeah,
I
absolutely.
suspect so. Maybe it's fun for me.
If she does some batch
Must have been my
cooking
kind
in
of
an
idea.
instant pot, that would definitely be a good suggestion. Yeah, so Riyadh, you're going to be setting up another business
new,
here,
Ollie?
fun with cooking. Yeah, so sometimes people just, you know, one of the biggest things that we have to do when we have
Ollie,
them
how
come to
do you do
clinic
that?
is really think about where they are in terms of their journey with cooking. And we have to just take steps that are easy and
And if that
manageable
would
and
have
that
been
they
Ollie
can
at
buy
101, he
into.
would have, you
So
would have not, we
really
don't do £2, you do like
possibly
25 quid. Can you imagine?
we could
2.5
think about
grand,
going
just
for the
like
healthier
that.
options at lunchtime. We
Oh,
could think about a healthier
she
type
asked
of
my
home
mum.
delivery service.
My mum
Is that
engages with
what
Josh,
she's
so they were
doing?
watching the
Maybe
Arsenal
even some
Man
of
United
those
game, and
ones
all I heard, I
where
was
there is a
studying
bit of
upstairs.
cooking
All I heard was
involved,
my
but all the
mum just
ingredients are
swearing the
there. I
whole
mean, I
time,
think
going,
such as fresh or some of the different ones where you get the ingredients
yeah,
and it
she's
might be
leaving
just a
tomorrow.
matter of stir frying it or putting it
Yes,
together
she's leaving
yourself.
tomorrow, and I got the fucking
Um,
excuse me, the dentist, and I forgot my toothbrush. And I'm drinking coffee.
Yeah, I
I
mean,
need to buy
you know,
it.
school canteens, yeah, I think there's a lot of
No,
improvement
makes
that
me
needs to
slightly
be done there.
uncomfortable.
Really, it's a bit like hospital food as well. So yeah, a lot of different suggestions there about things we can
Apparently,
do. What are the things that really stand out as
where is
negative in
it?
the diet?
Watford, I suspect. Do you have an NHS death list?
Okay,
Am I the
so you're
only one
thinking
who has
about
it?
the alcohol.
No. Am
So
I the only
look
one who has
at
an NHS? Funny
maybe
enough, Mike has an
kombucha.
NHS
We
death
need to
list, you
just
know?
be cautious with kombucha
How
as
is that
well.
possible?
You know, there still is
Someone
a
like
pretty
her
high
can't get
level of
one.
sugar in it.
Her
So,
pointing
but
at
then
you,
we're
Bonnie.
thinking about
And Mike has
fermented
an
foods.
NHS
There's
death list.
benefits with that.
Well,
I mean,
yeah,
there's a lot of sort of alcohol-free alternatives. So maybe somebody
Fuck you.
still, we have to offer substitutes for it, because a lot of it is part of the ritual of, whoa, this is my wind down time now. It's about getting a
I don't
glass
know,
in
actually.
hand
She's
and
still
feeling that
paid.
this is a
She's still,
reward for a
I'd still
hard
pay for
day.
white filling.
So
I just don't know
maybe
how much. Well,
even
actually, I
just
don't want
still
her to
have the
trust.
wine glass,
If she
still have
says
the
you need
ritual,
to see the
but it
hygienist,
doesn't
I'm going,
necessarily need
can
to
I
be
go
something
somewhere else because
alcoholic
your
in it.
hygienist
So maybe
really
just
isn't on
try to
there.
sort of find a
Oh,
substitute
yeah,
that
but
would be
I went last time
acceptable
with
to
that new
them,
girl. She looked a bit like,
and that isn't
anyway, never
actually
mind.
going to
Let's
be
just
a
not go there.
sugary alternative.
Where are you going?
So there's a lot of good suggestion.
No,
Kombucha is
don't go,
great.
Oliver.
Sometimes even, you know, there's some nice fermented, I think that
Oh, really?
umber apple
You know,
cider
they're only doing
vinegar is
the
nearly
trials
like
in
a
humans now.
fermented
They
one. I
only
think it's
tested it
quite a
in mice
nice
so far.
a drink to have. You can have a lot of sort of different ones,
Why
maybe
are you on
just
the high
a
risk?
water with lemon and ginger. Think about the different alternatives that you will start to recommend to your clients as well. Yeah, absolutely, Marjorie,
Because
you're
if you're
right. You
traveling,
need
I
to think
assume.
about, you know, why she needs, why she feels the need to reach for alcohol to help her de-stress. Maybe just really sort of an understanding about the number of units there are in her consumption
Wow.
over the week,
Not
and
sure
maybe
it
a
is
little
safe
bit
with
of
all those side
education
effects.
there. Maybe some education towards the
But,
impact that that's going to have on her hormonal balance. Think
have
about
you found a flight yet? No,
pre-conceptual
no, no,
care.
no, no.
So very good to get a handout together
Oh,
for
hang
any
on.
of
Oh, no, we haven't
your
been to
clients that are
Sorry.
planning to
Friday.
conceive, because really there needs to be
Where
that
do you track them? Can I
preparation
just ask
that's
out of
going on for
curiosity?
months
Because
before they're planning to
Google
conceive.
Flights. I never heard of
And for
Google
anybody
Flights.
that is on
And
that
what do I
fertility
usually do?
journey
What
and
is that
trying to
called?
conceive, we
Travel?
would really
Yes,
be
that's the one.
looking
No,
for them to
it is
cut out
tracking.
alcohol completely.
Because if
Can you take
America ever
apple
changes
cider
their
vinegar
bloody thingy, I
anytime?
want
Yeah,
to
absolutely.
go
I would
straight
be
to Ally,
inclined
to
to very
Lalaland.
often reach for a glass of diluted apple cider vinegar. The one that I'm taking is like a brownie sort of one. It's called amber, and I actually think it's, you know, very palatable to have just even with sparkling water. In the evening, she could have a golden milk turmeric drink.
Yeah.
So that's really super in terms of
That's not
anti-inflammatory.
bad.
It is, yeah, it can be very tasty. Try to use
Wow,
a nut milk with
how?
that, or an oat milk. The oat
I
milk in
know,
the
we used
evening
to,
would
when
be
I worked
very
for Ramblers, we had our
beneficial,
own flight
because it would be
department. So
very
actually what
sort
they
of
did, I never
relaxing
thought.
as well. So that would be really
Yeah, it was
good
they had
as
to
a
sell something to get A
suggestion.
class, and then they got
We need
3
to think
flights, so
about
twice a
trying to
year they had
remove
like,
those chocolate
they gave
biscuits.
away
And
like
the other thing, you know, she's
long haul flights
noted that
anywhere.
she
They just, it was like
she's
30
noted
kids,
that
and
she's
then they
put
had to
on
draw
a lot of
or
weight.
loads
So we
skinny
need to think
flights.
about
Really quite
then, you know,
cool.
that sort of hormonal imbalance.
Managed
But I
these
think what we
booklets.
would need to be looking at here as well is the timing of her food and the timing of
Brilliant.
when she eats. And one of the things, I was driving
Then-
yesterday in my car, and
So you're going to stay a
I've
bit
actually
longer
no idea
in
how
Singapore?
how it switched on, but it was
Has Jim been?
Dr. Rangan Chatterjee's podcast, and it
I was going to
was
say,
one of the
I
ones where
always,
he had a lot of
hang on, London
summaries
Central
for
University.
you know, from different speakers that he'd
I
had
would
on
like
various
to,
different podcasts. And for any of you that do
Sri
sort
Lanka.
of
I'd really
listen
like
to
to do Sri
Dr. Rangan
Lanka.
Chatterjee, you know that he has some sort of amazing speakers on, and this one was really talking about
And then
time
COVID
restricted
happened,
eating
didn't it?
or intermittent fasting, and basically the speaker was saying,
Yes,
well,
I
like, you know, he
completely
really
agree. I'd
considers them the
really love to.
same,
I mean, obviously
about really
I also like to
about
go
really
to
trying to sort of reduce
Vietnam.
that length of time
A
that
friend of
you're
mine went to
actually
Vietnam, and
eating.
it's just,
And he
he
was
said it was the
talking
most, and he's
about
been all over the world,
experiments with
and he said it was the most
mice,
amazing holiday.
and
He
when
said
they
the most
actually
beautiful
fed a
country ever.
high
Would have never
calorie
occurred to me, Vietnam. I
diet
mean,
to 2 different sets of mice, the ones that were
Thailand as well.
restricted
I've never
in the
been.
time that they had to eat didn't actually put on weight,
Oh,
even though they were getting the same number of calories as the other group of mice.
That
So
sounds
there's
amazing.
so
That
much
sounds really- How
evidence, and I
old were
think
you?
this intermittent fasting is really now the most popular diet in the world.
That's amazing.
And I think we should
That
think
is
about
amazing.
it
I'm
as,
so
you know,
jealous.
just a way of eating that we
I
need
wish
to
I would have
start to
done something like
encourage
that. I
some
just
of our
did not have the
clients
balls,
to
you know,
actually
at that
sort of
age.
buy into,
I wish
because
Josh
this
would
will
have any
have
interest
an impact.
in doing
If you
something.
even think about the
Because I
lining
always knew
in
I
your
wanted to
gut,
travel and
that you
It doesn't
actually
seem
need
to.
to give it
My
time
friend
to
said as well, the other
repair and
boy,
restore.
they used to be
And if
good
you're
friends. They made this.
actually,
But what happened to
if you're
kids nowadays?
constantly
They
bombarding
seem
it
to
with food,
lack
it's
the
going to be very
get out and
damaging.
go.
And then you think about, you know, those,
Sounds really terrible.
you think about the alcohol there as well, fizzy drink, you know, all these things are going to have a massive irritating effect on the gut lining. It needs time to repair. So let me
Oh, I
just take a
loved it.
look
How
at
long did
some
you do
of the
Thailand?
comments.
It was
Eat breakfast. Well, you know, I used to always recommend everybody has a really
Love.
good
That's the
breakfast.
thing,
And
because when
now,
you,
you
I was
know,
going to say, when
I
you
think
grow
the
up,
idea of
you're
skipping a
never going to
meal
have the
isn't
time
bad.
again.
So if she tends to skip
That's the
breakfast, I
problem,
mean, if
isn't
she
it?
could skip breakfast and maybe have some sort of
So it's
warm
like
water
that,
and lemon
because
in
as
the
soon as you
morning,
start work,
that could
there's
be
no
fine.
backing out again,
But if she
unless you
had a
have a
nice
big
porridge
change in
breakfast, which has
career
been
or.
suggested here,
But as
then it
also
would be
when you get
much
used to the
easier for
money.
her to skip that unhealthy lunchtime meal, or to opt for a sort of a healthier alternative. She's really needing calories at this stage. She's needing energy, and that's where she would have this sort of craving then for high carb food, which then sort of brings her into that sort of whole blood sugar level roller coaster.
I hope they're not coming into their head enough. I need a bit of a
Everybody's
recovery.
different, Carrie. So you're saying, how does that sit
It's
with
just
the
been a bit
suggestion that
much.
she needs to have breakfast? In this particular case, she
Things
could
all
skip
pay.
breakfast, but what we're seeing here is that this is really her liver being under stress. In her particular case, going into
it's also
school to teach,
well,
you know, she
maybe
probably
it's,
needs energy in the morning
and
to
clearly
get her
it doesn't
through, to
seem to
have the
him
stamina, you know, to
like
teach and be full of energy. She
clearly
could, if it suited
he's
her,
dead serious,
skip
right?
breakfast.
But then John said
But
he
buying a
always, when he
coffee and
falls
using that
like
as an
big,
artificial stimulant
you know.
isn't really, really helpful. You know, so everything, you know, everybody's different. Everybody has sort of things that will work better for them. For some people, it could be skipping breakfast. For me, it would be skipping breakfast and fasting until lunchtime or until early afternoon. For somebody else, it could be skipping an evening meal or stopping eating at 6 o'clock and then not eating until 8 o'clock or 10 o'clock in the morning. I think everybody's different. What will work for one person mightn't suit another person, but it's about really trying to sort of develop healthy habits. And I think we do all need to sort of consider that compressing of the eating window. So here it's going to be that she has a coffee at 7:30 in the morning, but she's still eating at 10 p.m. at night. And she's having snacks between meals, and she's having snacks right up to bedtime. We need to reduce that. We need to also have the suggestion that somebody sits down and mindfully eats when they're eating, that they're not just grabbing food on the way, that they need to give themselves the opportunity to digest the food, and that they're very conscious of the food that they're actually eating.
After the dog walk, like that.
So so it was with Professor Panda and Dr. Runga Chatterjee. So yeah, thank you. It was a really good talk, really interesting. Intermittent fasting can be very restrictive. It just depends on how you do it. And for anybody that's going to start to introduce it gently and then maybe expand it a bit. Don't go too extreme. It can be very, very extreme. And a lot of people eat out of habit rather than when they're hungry.
This one, but
yeah, Dr. Ruby is brilliant as well. Yeah, so she's better to skip the chocolate biscuits in the evening and have a 12-hour fast. Kate, yeah, you know, some people just can't miss breakfast, so they have to go with what's right for them. Okay. I think sort of the menstruation cups, so a question here about the menstruation cups. So I think the menstruation cups are, you know, really probably better than using Tampax or things that are bleached and that. So I would be more in favor of them. I think in most cases, you know, we're not going to get this sort of retrograde menstruation. You know, it is something that all of us have to be aware of, you know, and maybe sort of just be cautious with Pilates or yoga or things like that with menstruation. But I would be inclined to sort of favor the menstruation cups. So any other comments? So lifestyle measures. So just even in terms of foods, really, what I've been thinking about for this client, so for Jackie, is, you know, things like fish oils. So we really need some sort of really good quality omega-3 fatty acids. So maybe fish oils would be very, very good for her. We would need to have a lot more sort of plant-based food in our diet. So we really would like to see some fruits. So I would really always like to see my clients getting some blueberries into their diet. We need the phytonutrients from different colored foods. So really always try to start to get that suggestion of look at the color on a plate. So not that beige junk food. We would actually be really thinking about sort of as many different colors and as many different types of food. The more diverse the diet, the better, because you're introducing lots of healthy bacteria, lots of different types. Absolutely, Marjorie. Yeah, I mean, a lot of people are addicted to sugar. Forget that pasta and white rice and things break down very, very quickly into sugar. We want to get some sort of grains, some beans. Beans are absolutely wonderful foods. So to have in the diet,
Morning,
so we can
Mike. I
get
hope
some
you had a good
beans with
weekend.
lots of
Actually, I'm not
fiber
even
there.
going to say that.
We could have seed cycling. Yeah, absolutely. So seed cycling would be a good one. But we're thinking then too about things like magnesium and magnesium-rich foods. You know, the vitamins, the B vitamins for energy there, and the B6 in particular. And then also really having sort of, you know, sort of a very much plant-based diet to really help to try and reduce that pain. Any lifestyle things you would suggest? So magnesium salt baths, regularly, great. Yes, so that would be a good way of getting the magnesium into the diet. So let me go back.
Regarding
So deep breathing, absolutely deep breathing, grounding in nature, walking at the weekend, walking after dinner. Yeah, do some sort of high intensity exercise. It doesn't have to be a lot. It can be really, really beneficial. Think about some sort of alternatives to the alcohol. Why is there the need for alcohol there? That sort of self-medicating with alcohol. Try and sort of find something else that will sort of fill that void. Castor oil packs, yeah, can be really, really beneficial as well. Connecting with nature, Pilates, yoga. Yes, abdominal massage, yeah, could be really, really helpful. I imagine you're speaking from experience there.
Oh, it's a crazy, honestly, it's a crazy world.
Prioritizing sleep has to be
If somebody would have told me that this would have happened, right?
For all of our clients, we really start to put into measures that they're getting a
I'm glad we
good
both
quality 7 to 9 hours sleep every
I
night.
didn't expect Mark to react
to get
like that.
7 hours of
You know what I
quality
mean? In
sleep,
terms
it
of,
really means you need to be in bed for probably 8
like a
hours.
grown-up.
So even sometimes things like
well, he's
sleep
usually a
alarms
hard
can be really good to
throat.
get people to go to bed at a certain time and to get some extra sleep. Exercise, getting out in the sunshine for serotonin.
I don't know.
Absolutely. Yeah, there's lots
Well, I
of
don't
things
know,
that
but
she could
clearly he wants
actually
more
be doing
reels,
here.
great reels.
Any further investigations? Anything that you would sort of recommend that she needs to go and get checked out?
Shit, and I'm like, yep. I said I wasn't going to be the first to say it, but yeah.
Oh, I tried looking at it on LinkedIn and it looks quite blurry.
Yeah, it's not.
Always useful when you have a client to sort of ask them to bring any blood test results to the clinic with you, a copy of blood test results. Really, really useful if we just see, sort of get a full blood count, if we get sort of those liver enzymes to see if our liver's under stress, sort of kidney function, all those different sort of markers that could be going on. We could be thinking too, you know, is there a thyroid issue? She says she's putting on a lot of weight. Potentially we might want to rule out if there's, you know, if there's a problem with her her thyroid, we would like to see sort of the levels
Yeah,
of
you
those
said.
inflammatory markers. We could potentially think about doing a Dutch test to measure the hormones. Always be conscious to let's get the basics done by the GP, which aren't going to cost the client anything. Let's make some sort of initial recommendations to see if we can move them towards a more healthy diet, and then potentially if we want to sort of investigate further, we would maybe do a Dutch test. You know, there is an expense involved with that, so we always have to be cautious about that. So there's a lot of different things there. Yeah, we could be thinking about, is there SIBO going on?
Yeah.
We could think about, you
We
know,
could do it without
whether
speaking
there's
English.
any
I
sort
know
of
it sounds
other
like weird.
conditions. A
Because
comprehensive
it's always
stool test can sort of give an
I would take
indication
my
about the
I would
gut.
take my mum and
But,
Josh and
Yeah,
Well, I think it's kind of like
oh,
figuring
that's
out like
good. Yeah, so
yeah, no, so if you
endometriosis
explain,
and
then
CNM podcast.
if we sort of say
So we've
Carlo
got
said,
but
Leah
what about a cultural
Heckman,
reference?
who
Is it all
is
like
a mentor
English?
CNM, and Leah Heckman has done some
So,
talks for
but it's not like
CNM, and you can
necessarily English
check out
cultural reference. I'm
her
not going to be EastEnders or
website.
whatever.
She's got some super information. She's an Australian naturopath. We have some podcasts from her. If you're in nutrition already, you probably have seen
Okay.
her book.
Oh, so it's
There's
yeah, that sounds
there's
good.
some extra resources here, and there's another I think there's another resource that I put
and then you can ring a bell
on,
to ask them for
even
food,
just
but
in
you can
terms
remember that.
of,
I'd be like, oh, they're saying it's something to do with it.
there's another resource here, Jean Hales. Let's see if I've got it down here. Yeah, this booklet here with Jean Hales. So sorry, it was just one I came across earlier this morning. For understanding endometriosis. So that's a really good sort of summary of what endometriosis is at just the
Yeah, I
level
almost
that you
stabbed
have to
my
do.
thing.
Bye, Kelly.
What's
We've run over time, so I'm going to finish up now anyway. But just even take a look at some of this extra information here. Jean Hale's booklet is good. Leah Heckman's website is really useful. I think she's done a podcast on endometriosis. And then there's some sort of other information here at the bottom of the case study that you can read for sort of extra information. So great to have the input from any of you today, like Jade and others that have had endometriosis. It's always great to share, and I mean, I really love it when you share your own experience and what things have helped with you. And so I hope to see you again soon, probably next week. And have a lovely day. I'm back on this evening at 7 to 8 o'clock doing the same case study again. So thank you so much for so many of you joining me today, and I'll see you all again soon.
Quite funny, the osteopath I met when I worked on Saturday at the pet shop. She treated Josh 20 years ago when he was a baby. And then and I know she treats, I recognize her because she treats my friend's dogs and does laser therapy and all that kind of thing. So we had a chat because I think the beagle is in a bit of discomfort. He walks funny. I think it's just because he's badly bred. Backyard breeders and all that kind of stuff. Oh, has this finished, please? Yes, leave.